Why, hello there. My name is Mountain, and today I'd like to talk to you about this. And what is this, you might ask? Well, this, my friends, is the Dayfarer V2 Backpack 24 liter by Modern Dayfarer, a German manufacturer of a small but well-considered set of bags, pouches, and EDC travel accessories. Now, as the name suggests, this is the second iteration of their famous Dayfarer EDC backpack, which on their website is described as ideal for sport, work, and everything in between. Now, I've been using this bag for a few weeks now and wanted to share some of my thoughts. In terms of the strengths of this bag, well, I think one of the biggest strengths is a good combination of this very large central main volume here, quite large, and we'll get into this in a minute here, along with a moderate degree of organization that makes it suitable for a variety of use cases, like gym, EDC, gym and commute, EDC, and maybe a very tightly dialed one-bag travel type scenario. Its sleek, kind of slimmer design, especially when cinched down like this, takes up less visual and physical bulk than you would expect for a bag of this nominal rated literage, especially versus like a clamshell 24 liter. On top of that, it's quite flexible in usage. You can attach an optional waist strap to this bag here. You can attach like an optional sternum strap here. You can expand the top up quite a bit to actually let it hold a lot more and bigger and heavier loads when you're, kind of packing it out. Or else you can cinch it down tight like I had it before for a more streamlined kind of EDC look. So it really is quite flexible in the various kind of ways that you can use the bag and customize, adjust it to your needs. Now, conversely, there are a few areas for improvement on this bag, I think. One of them is that some of the organization, for example, the side quick access pocket that I'll talk about, was a little bit more frictionful in usage than I kind of would have preferred. Also, maybe this back security pocket, although that may be an okay thing for a security pocket. The main buckle fidlock strap tends to come loose fairly easily with just a little bit of lateral motion. Obviously, fidlocks are designed to do that, but this one just kind of came loose a little bit more unexpectedly in different scenarios than I was expecting. And then also some parts of the bag maybe didn't hold quite as much as I might have expected. So in a couple of areas, for example, this interior top mesh pocket, or particularly this bottom interior flat pocket, it was just a little bit tighter than I was kind of hoping for. Same thing, I think, with this side quick stash pocket there as well. And then while this is hardly the only bag in the world that doesn't tend to stand up on its own, I found that this bag kind of spent its whole life kind of face down and laying down. And even it was really hard to kind of, because it has sort of a sloped back bottom part, unless there was a lot of heavy stuff in the bag, I found it really hard even to like lean it up against, like a chair or a wall, because it would kind of slide down a little bit. But anyway, all in all, we'll talk about all these different things and more in the review here. So some basic information about this bag is it's available in any color you like, as long as that color is black. It's available at moderndayfarer.com. I'll put the link in the description below. And it's currently selling for $195 at the time of this recording, US dollars at the time of this recording. Now, before we kind of get into the rest of this video, I want to just take a quick moment to give a shout out and thanks to Modern Dayfarer for sending me this bag for review. I've been using it as my daily carry bag for a few weeks now for recording this video. Now, as always, even though like this bag was provided for review, all the thoughts and opinions expressed are my own. Modern Dayfarer won't get to see this video until it goes live, and I have plenty of other Modern Dayfarer goods that I've actually purchased with my own money, which I will review at some point, I think. Just kind of standard disclaimer there for you. So with that out of the way, let's talk about who this bag is for and who it's not for. So in terms of who this bag is for, well, one of the most obvious use cases, in my opinion, is going to be great for the work, school, and gym crowd, i.e. those people who are carrying a combination of like bulky items, some laptops, and some books. There's a built-in shoe pouch here, which I currently have some masks in here. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, which you can obviously use to store shoes. And then the bag, as I mentioned earlier, kind of expands up so you can still carry things like, your books and some other things. And there's obviously like a separate externally accessible laptop pocket. So that's a pretty good use case that I liked for this bag here. Another one is like there are days where you need to carry a bunch of stuff. And actually this is actually one of those. This is just how I had it loaded out, I think yesterday and this morning. There's just like a bunch of like random stuff in here. For some reason, multiple types of headphones, stuff in here. There's, quite a bit of stuff in the front pocket, which I'll show you in a minute. And then I've got both a laptop and an iPad Pro with a keyboard cover all thrown in here. So sometimes you just want to carry a bunch of stuff. And even though it's kind of like, you know, nominally rated 24 liters, it looks pretty svelte. This bag tends to be able to like swallow it up, and there's a bit of gustening, like some expandability here that lets it, you know, comfortably carry that. There's some other affordances in terms of the back panel and stuff that we'll talk about that I think also make it pretty good for carrying a bunch of stuff. Now, again, you know, within limits, of course, it is still nominally a 24-liter bag. So if you want to carry a basketball, that's not going to fit in this bag. You need to go to like a duffel or something like that. Finally, I think another maybe good use case for this is quite light, minimalist one-bag travelers. Like it makes good use of the adjustable capacity or expandable capacity of this bag here, how it can kind of like, you know, bulk up to carry more stuff when you're kind of going point to point, and then it can cinch down a little bit smaller when you're at the destination and you need a destination use EDC bag. There's also kind of like nice affordances, like the fact that the whole front area fillets open. That makes it, you know, actually both this side here, makes it quite easy to kind of load this bag as you might with a, you know, one bag travel scenario. Now there are limitations with that because like the bag is not super deep, you know, especially compared to like some, you know, purpose-built one-bag travel bags, but still like for, you know, people with, you know, fairly well-dialed one-bag travel kind of minimalist setups, like this is going to be a pretty good bag for that, I think. Also, the same thing here, the rigid back panel that I'll talk about tends to make it quite comfortable for traveling with slightly heavier loads. Now, in terms of who this bag maybe is not for, well, those who want a place for everything. Now, numerically, there's a moderate degree of organization in this bag, but in reality, I found most things in this bag tend to end up jumbled up in a big pile at the bottom. Another example is maybe what I showed you here. Like everything just kind of ends up jumbled in a big pile at the bottom. So if you're a person who likes a spot for everything and, you know, you want your pens here and your wallet here and all that easily accessible and organized, this is not a good bag for you. Now I did say this is good for, you know, some, you know, one bag travelers with like moderately dialed setups or with well dialed setups or minimalist one bag travelers. If you're kind of newer to the one bag travel game, or if you're carrying more stuff, like especially if you're carrying like camera gear and clothes, which is something that I often do. Like some one bag travelers don't carry a camera, they just use their phone. Great bag for you. If you're, you know, traveling in the winter, if you're carrying with like camera gear, plus your clothes and stuff, this bag just, you know, there are much better one bag travel bags in that sense there. So just kind of figure out which kind of one bag traveler you are. And certainly clamshell style loading bags are going to be a little bit easier to load than this one. And finally, people who like bags that stand up, like it's kind of weird to call that out because again, lots of bags don't stand up. I often talk about like I like bags to stand up, but due to this shaping, like this bag in particular, just spends its whole life face down. It slides a lot when you try and lean it against. I just kind of found, you know, there was no easy way to get this bag to like I was always holding this bag with one hand and trying to access it with the other. Anyway, just something to call out. So next, let's talk about the exterior materials and design of this bag. Now, looking at the bag, the first thing that sticks out to me anyway is like the overall shaping and its kind of very clear dimensions and silhouette. Has this kind of tapered, sloping design by default when it's kind of cinched down. Like I said, you can actually let this out. You can let it out even more if you wanted to. You know, you can really kind of, you know, let it become much more rectangular if you wanted and kind of buckle it down like this. But overall, like the silhouette and the dimensions of this bag are quite clear and sort of notable about it. You can kind of spot it from a distance. There are several other bags that resemble it in that silhouette, which we'll talk about at the end here, but I kind of like that. And in general, I myself tend to prefer bags or products in general that have an opinion about their design or their use case or their, you know, silhouette, etc., the problem that they're trying to solve. So I tend to appreciate that in a bag. That said, this bag does have a little bit of rigidity. That's another thing you notice, like this part is quite rigid. This front flap is quite rigid. The back panel is quite rigid. I'll talk about that as well. And the way that, even though it's not rigid explicit inherently, when you load up this front panel here, it tends to be fairly rigid. You can see, like there's nothing like physically rigid in here, but just when you put, well, I guess there is a little bit. And I guess like when you put stuff in it, it tends to be quite rigid. So that's something that I kind of noted about the bag, both its silhouette and opinion about its kind of design and shaping, but also like areas of rigidity. On the other hand, the sidewalls are not padded or don't have any inherent rigidity built into them. So that does give this bag this kind of interesting combination of flex, but also rigidity to its kind of silhouette. It reminds me in some respects of like the Peak Design Everyday backpack, which I'll show you at the end here, which is obviously a much more rigid bag because it's designed to carry camera gear, but kind of in terms of its overall silhouette. I've talked a couple times already about the fact that this bag doesn't stand up on its own. It's just a little frustrating for me because I just couldn't get it to, like I said, stay leaning up. It's got a lot of stuff loaded at the bottom right now. This is a fairly frictionful surface, so it does okay. But the biggest problem I had is when I would take it to a cafe or to the office or whatever, and you have like those kind of hard marble, well, I don't know, marble, but not that fancy, you know, those marble floored cafes that people hang out at. But you know, like the floor has like a really kind of solid stone or smooth surface, and then a little bit of dust gets on there just from daily life. Like that, just like this bag would just slip. It would just slip no matter which way, partially because of the materials, which we'll talk about here in a minute here. Anyway, just kind of want to call that out, something else that I kind of noticed. I did briefly talk about this as well. The other thing that strikes the eye is like this top loading design. I've seen it described as like a roll top without the roll top. I mean, it's just like a front load. It's just a top loading, you know, kind of flap style bag. It allows for fairly quick access into the top of the bag. Again, because the bag doesn't stand up on its own, you're always like two-handing it, one hand to hold it up and one hand to get inside. Whereas if it just stood up on its own, you could just flip the top and work in and out of it. So not a great bag to work in and out of because you always have to like hold it. But it does have this kind of like, you know, nice design. It's quite fast to, you know, and the one time I said it's quite fast, then it doesn't buckle. It's quite fast to buckle this fidlock. I quite like that actually about this. And I did mention also like this is adjustable, so you can adjust and vary the capacity of the bag and how tall or rectangular, how much stuff it carries, which is quite, you know, enhances the flexibility and the use case of this bag. Now, in terms of materials, they are a kind of nice standard mix of solid mainstream materials with a couple of nice quasi-enthusiast touches. So 840D ballistic nylon with a water repellent coating. Fidlock, obviously magnetic buckle on the front here, also on the sternum strap, which I will talk about in the sternum strap section. You get YKK AquaGuard zippers at the top here. And then you have these kind of nice little Hypalon zipper pulls, which are a nice touch as well. The bag is decently water resistant, but I wouldn't like go under a sustained deluge with it. But for light rain, you'll be fine as long as you're sure that you make sure that these like top gussets are closed. If you have the bag like super packed out like this, all the way to the top, sometimes the, you know, like it can kind of jut out a little bit, but that doesn't usually happen unless you got the bag super packed out. But anyway, under like normal normal circumstances, you'll be fine. So next, let's talk about the load carriage on this bag, starting with the top and the side handle. So there's two handles, one's here on the side, one's here on the top. They are that kind of standard, let's see if we get this focus here. Foam kind of, there's like a foam core, slightly padded, covered with like a nylon kind of cloth or whatever. Both of them are the same kind of design here. They're fairly low profile, especially the side one is not really very noticeable when not in use. It doesn't have any elastic or anything. It's just kind of like, you know, low profile in general. The back one does have a bit more of a loop, as you can see here, kind of a little bit of a loop, but because it's on the back and kind of facing away from the front of the bag, it doesn't even stick up over the top. It's not very noticeable when not in use. And I kind of like it because, as I mentioned, I would often try and lean this bag against something. And that means that this back handle sticks up. So when I go pick up the bag, it's just right there to kind of pick it up and go with it. Now, because of the placement of the handle, obviously it cants when you're carrying it because of the weight distribution here. Same thing with this side mounted handle, because it only runs this length of the bag because of the water bottle pocket. It actually attaches right here. It doesn't even run the whole length of the water bottle pocket. So when you pick it up, it tends to cant like this. That also means if you're trying to two-hand the bag, you're kind of at an awkward 45-degree angle as opposed to a more, you know, stable 90-degree hold as you would expect in many kinds of two-handed bags. But still, like, you know, it's a small enough bag that it doesn't matter too much in here. In general, like, I think these are really good handles that really enhance the usability of the bag without like sticking out or seeming like, you know, out of place or getting too fancy or whatever. So really appreciate that, despite the minor compromises around weight distribution that I mentioned. So next, let's talk about the backpack straps on this bag here. They are here, and they're implemented in a relatively straightforward and kind of solid manner, which I appreciate. There's nothing too fancy about these, but they get the job done. In terms of design, you're going to notice they're quite flat, like they fold quite flat here at just the way that they're designed and attached to the bag. That actually makes it really easy for sliding this bag under a seat in front of you, like on an airplane or whatever, because like you don't have like an awkward, like, you know, sharp bend in the padding or whatever. So it's quite nice. They're fairly straightish. There's some slight ergonomic curving, but generally they're fairly straightish until they get this kind of much more aggressive contour in the bottom 2/5 of the length or so. And I appreciate like the simple visual impression that these straps make, while still remaining to have some of the, you know, expected ergonomic benefits of like a contour here. Not too aggressive of a shaping, not too crazy of a shaping, but still like, you know, comfortably, contouring to like the real shape of a human body. Now, looking at the front of the pads, sometimes you'll see like a construction pad, like they'll have like a hard layer on the top here, and then you'll have like foam, softer foam underneath. I can't quite tell. There might be some very thin layer here, but it doesn't feel too distinct from the foam that's underneath here. They're fairly flexible as a result, right? They're not like, without a harder plastic layer, like some of those that have those, it's a little bit harder to bend them. These are very flexible, but because of the density of the foam, which I'll talk about here in a second, like they're quite comfortable. So like this is actually, like, again, really straightforward, but like well done, like well implemented, which I appreciate here. They contour well to the body because of that contouring here at the bottom and flexibility, but then like they lock in. And there's other parts of the load carriage system that I'll talk about in a second that kind of contribute to that. Now, in terms of the padding, which I just mentioned here, it's not particularly thick. Like these are, I don't know, I wouldn't say they're quite thin, but they're on the thinner side of what you might see. There's no like fancy air mesh or anything at the bottom here, so no pores or holes, which generally I prefer non-porous things like this because they're easier on your clothing, they won't chew it up. The padding itself is thin but fairly dense. I already mentioned like the flexibility and that. And I think that they're quite comfortable under most loads. You put it in a bag of this size, even when you got it packed out a little bit more. Again, talk about a little parts of the load carriage system that help contribute to that here. This kind of like stretchy, it's slightly stretchy, hard to show here. I'll show it on the back panel, but slightly stretchy, almost like a nylon or like a, not quite lycra material over this dense foam. Absorbs obviously a little bit of sweat. I didn't try this out in the heat of summer, so I don't know, but like generally, like I found this to be quite comfortable and quite stable here. And this material and this foam seems related to what we see on this back panel here in a moment. Now, the front of it has this expected straps for attaching a sternum strap, though interestingly, they're kind of bifurcated. There's like a top part and a bottom part, which is not a design I've seen before. Usually they just kind of run, you know, like the entire length. I quite like this because that means that when you put the sternum strap here, it doesn't like yank this in an ugly way, which you'll sometimes have. Like if you look at the implementation on some air backpacks, they kind of pull in the middle like this. The sternum strap is an optional separate accessory. This is sold separately, and it's a very straightforward implementation. Fidlock buckle. It's got the little elasticated portion here for comfort and while it's being worn. Attaches in a very standard and very like secure way, slides up and down, but holds its place. No complaints here. Same as the backpack straps. I feel it was implemented in a straightforward but very reliable manner. And I kind of appreciate when companies, like obviously I appreciate innovation in the carry space, but I also like it when companies sometimes just use reliable, tried and true solutions for things that, you know, don't need people to reinvent the wheel. So very happy with this sternum strap. I just wish it were included in the bag. So if you're part of the sternum strap squad like I am, make sure you order that when you're picking up this bag. Although any kind of, you know, third-party sternum strap that fits on this rail system, which is quite standard, will also do. And then the last thing is there's built-in integrated strap keepers in the backpack straps at the bottom here, which I like, and then kind of like a sewn over pull tab if you need to like adjust the bag or whatever. I found that these were very like good at keeping their length. They didn't lose their place or anything like that. So overall, quite happy with these backpack straps for what they are, even though they look pretty simple, you know, in first appearance. So next, let's talk about the frame sheet and the back padding of this bag here. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to talk about it now. Like, this bag has a surprisingly stiff frame sheet for the type of bag and the size of the bag. I didn't expect it to be quite that stiff when I first got it. And let me just pull out the devices here to kind of show you, like, like it's quite stiff. Like, it was just surprising to me. Again, it's not a bad thing, and actually it's a good thing in many ways, just kind of unexpected. So it doesn't feel quite like wearing a board on your back. I want to be clear about that. But it does feel much more rigid on the back, which is notable to me, especially when I would like lean over to, like, you know, I'm wearing the backpack, I would lean over to like tie my shoes. It just felt very different. There is some pretty good padding, which we'll talk about here in a second, that helps it not be uncomfortable, but it definitely is different. So I mentioned, like, when I would wear this backpack, I would lean over, like tie my shoe. Like in a lot of other backpacks, the internal load will like shift up to the top and suddenly hit you in the back of the head. This bag, I think, through a combination of the rigid frame sheet, the very aggressive, you know, sloped, tapered design, I didn't have that shift of weight, like a bong hit me in the back of the head, which I thought was nice. You generally want to avoid getting hit in the back of the head when tying your shoes, I guess. So that's great. It also felt much more stable and prevented, like, I don't know, the whole bag felt quite stable. Like I mentioned before, like with these flexible shoulder straps where it's clip in the sternum strap and cinch it down. And then like this rigid back panel, like the bag's load felt nice and secure and stable, even under heavy loads. And there was actually, for unfortunate reasons that just sucked, there was a period of about 2 weeks when I was using this bag that I had to carry 2 laptops and an iPad Pro with a keyboard cover, which is miserable. Like in general, that's just miserable. That's a lot of weight, not even counting the other stuff. And this bag actually, like, remarkably comfortable for that kind of a loadout, which I did not expect in a bag of this size. Definitely, like, the rigidity of this frame sheet helped a lot when under load. Now, there is maybe, you know, like one of the consequences of that actually is, I think this rigid frame sheet, along with some of the shaping of the bottom of the bag and all that, is part of the reason why this bag kind of slides down. It's just kind of like, it's hard to flex it. So like the bag just kind of flops like a whole solid object. It doesn't, like, you can't like squish it down and kind of like, you know, have the weight settle. It always just flips over because this frame sheet's so rigid. Now, the back panel itself, kind of moving on from the rigidity part of it, has this 2 raised areas here. And they're actually, like I mentioned, it's the same kind of stretchy nylon quasi-lycra material as the strap, so kind of appreciate the visual continuity of it. This is a thicker foam. I don't know if it's the same foam as this one. It feels a little bit softer. That might just be because it's thicker, but it's quite comfortable on the back, and then that leaves you with like these kind of 3 channels, ostensibly for airflow. In general, like I said, I found this quite comfortable overall. It was definitely, like, you know, more rigid than many other bags. And so if you look at something like the Evergoods, kind of, you know, with their ergonomic yoke and how that kind of, their frame sheet allows it to, like, kind of the bag to kind of flex and fit to your shoulders, even while it's having a frame sheet. Like this one doesn't do that. It's all straight, it's all flat, but it wasn't too bad because of this cushioning, because of this. There's obviously another feature here, which is this luggage pass-through. It's a little bit tighter than, you know, than I expected, just because of, not expected, but just because of the rigidity of the frame sheet. You see, it just kind of takes a minute to get it out there. Also, you have these raised areas, but that also, you know, works fairly well on trolleys because of this, you know, rigid frame sheet. It just doesn't really like turn around too easily, and these kind of padded areas kind of help it like stabilize. So very nice standard implementation of a thing that stays out of the way, but is useful for dropping this on top of a rolling suitcase when you need to. sorry, dipping back for a second to this, I forgot to mention, no air mesh holes or pockets or anything like that, same as on here. I like this. It will absorb some of the sweat. I haven't tested this in summer though, so, you know, I don't know. In general, I think that this is I like bags like this. Then again, it doesn't, you know, hold a candle, in my opinion, to something like the Evergoods, kind of the new kind of mesh that they have on there. It's just a different kind of design solution. I happen to prefer that one, but this one was quite, you know, quite comfy. Another thing on the back here are these loops on the bottom for the attachment of an optional hip belt, which is sold separately. Also, it's compatible probably with any kind of D-clip, gate clip style attaching hip belt, of which there are many in this world. So if you got this bag fully loaded out and you wanted that, you can obviously do that as well. So overall, while it's quite stiff, like I quite appreciated the back panel load part, you know, frame sheet, except part of the load carriage system. There is a little hidden pocket here that I'll talk about in a second here. So next, let's talk about the external pockets on this bag, starting with the water bottle pocket, which is there's just one on the, if you're facing the bag, it's on this side. So that could be right or left, depending on how you define directions. It's a very simple, gusseted, low profile design. Tends to stay out of the way. I guess it's gapped out a little bit here. Usually I find it's fairly low profile. It holds actually a surprising amount of like water bottle sizes, like a standard one here. It goes in really deep, but it actually, like, you can see it actually expands out quite a bit more. And what I liked about this is not only did it have the elastic here, it also has like a kind of stretchy, the same material I think is here, like this kind of stretchy full with pockets. So it actually, like, you know, tends to hold quite a bit. It's got some subtle gusseting at the bottom. You can see it's quite big in there. For smaller bottles like the one I showed you here, it tends to, you know, expand outward, which is usually what you want. When the bottle gets really big, it will actually intrude a little bit into the main compartment, which is unavoidable, but I quite like the flexibility of this pocket here. And then the other nice thing is that since the side handle is mounted here, if you wanted to put like an umbrella or like a tripod in here, which it will easily accommodate most of those, depending on how less gigantic tripods, I guess, well, it may not fit, but most normal ones will. You can then like loop a cord or something around here, and the umbrella or the tripod straps kind of really keep it, you know, strapped in and locked into place. Maybe the only thing I would note that's maybe negative, not negative, but just to note, there's no like rubberized interior, like, you know, surface here. So there's nothing, like, it's quite smooth. So if you've got like a really heavy water bottle that's really smooth, it is possible it might slip out like this if you invert the bag or something like that. Some of the others have like a little bit of rubber at the top to keep it locked in, but that's a very minor, like, you know, very minor point there. I had previously mentioned the back secret pocket, which I will now talk about. That's one of the exterior pockets on this bag here. It's fairly well hidden. It's just right here on the side. You wouldn't know it unless you know it. It has like this very low profile one way. Let's see if I can show you here. Very low profile little zipper here, and unzips here. It's about this length, like this. And it opens into a compartment like this, which is quite flat. Runs right to around here. So it's about this dimension. Fairly flat, and very flat actually. And in there I just have my phone right now. I think it's well suited to store things like a passport or like a small, very flat wallet, not like a thick wallet because you're just going to bulge into your back like this. And for things like that, it works very well. Things like you want to like keep rarely excess, but you want to keep secure, you know, like you still want first order access to. I think that works great. You'll notice I have my phone in here. That's because I couldn't find any other good spots to put my phone. So I just drop it in here, vertically here, so like it's kind of here. That's actually another area where the kind of stiff frame sheet helps. Like I'm not worried about bending forward and then breaking my phone, you know, in half or anything like that. It is a little bit, what can happen sometimes is the zipper here can actually get trapped in a downward position, and then it falls into this little pocket here, and it's really hard to fish it out. So it can be a little bit frictionful in here, like to get the zipper out, in and out in a hurry. Less ideal when you're carrying your phone there, but Obviously, that's a good attribute when you're carrying something more secure like a passport or whatever. So just something to keep in mind there. And we'll talk about in the other pockets why I'm putting my phone there as opposed to some of the other pockets there. So next, let's talk about the shoe compartment in this bag. So in general, I'm not a super huge fan of built-in shoe compartments, as I prefer to have them in their own shoe pouch in the main area for a variety of reasons. Like, you know, because sometimes you want bigger shoes and you want smaller shoes. It's just a more efficient usage of space. You don't have like superfluous features taking up weight, especially if you're rarely using blah, blah, blah. But I also like, it also cuts down on unneeded holes on the outside of the bag. But I also understand why some people prefer the convenience of having a built-in shoe pouch, especially if you carry shoes with you on a daily basis. And like I mentioned, one of the strengths of this bag, I think, is like the EDC gym combination use case. Like you go to the office, but you want to go to the gym afterwards, on the way home, whatever. Okay, implementation of this is very straightforward here. It's at the bottom, there's two zippers here. Opens up, boom, like this. I have masks in here because I obviously don't have shoes in here, and there's a dearth of like usable first order pockets with organization. Then I'll talk about the problems with this one for me, why I got my mask in here. But anyway, and then inside you've got like this ripstop, you know, poly nylon, whatever it is. I will talk about the correct material in the interior of this bag here, and then two grommets holes for like, you know, aeration or whatever. Now, I don't have shoes in the bag right now, but let me take out the interior contents briefly and show you what shoes look like inside of this bag. So here's you can notice here's the shoe pocket in here. And before we actually load it up, maybe we could talk very briefly about this, which is on the interior of the bag. You can see the shoe pocket here, and there's this Velcro strap. Oh, there we go. There's a Velcro strap here at the bottom that you can fold it and then secure it when you're not using it, which I really like. Good. I like it when bags have some sort of stowage for the shoe pouch. When you, unfurl it, it unfurls like this. This is a very standard implementation of an interior built-in shoe pouch. It takes up a substantial amount of room, as you can see. I've got here I had to go fish out a clean pair of shoes, so I wasn't like putting dirty shoes on camera here. I have here like this pair of our men's 29 centimeter, translate that to whatever is appropriate for your locale. Men's 29 centimeter Adidas Terex shoes. So kind of like a light hiking shoe, outdoorsy shoe. Slide it in here. And then we'll drop another one in here like this. And you can see like they fit in there. Generally, this is one of the other reasons why I prefer like independent shoe pouches rather than built-in ones. They're just easier to use. And you can see they take up a fair amount of space on the interior. One of the nice things about this is there's a little bit of space on either side here. So you can like drop things here and here. And as I mentioned earlier, like this bag is fairly flexible in how you can adjust the height of the top of the flappy part. So you can actually, like, for example, run this out a little bit more. And you can see, even though the shoes take up quite a lot of space, like the bag can be extended up a little bit, and you can still, cinch it down a little bit. And it gets a little bit more rectangular, a little bit taller, but you can still carry the shoes in there. And then obviously to access them, you just unzip and then your shoes come out like that. So we're going to take them out like this. And there you go. And you just kind of stuff that back in there. Now, there's a couple of inherent downsides to having a shoe pouch at the bottom like this. One of which is like there's holes here, which, you don't want to set the bag down on something muddy or something wet because water's going to get in there. Same thing here. I kind of wish they had used a storm guard or aqua guard zipper here that would have, and also like move the hole somewhere else. So like that way, like maybe a little bit up here. So that would have given me a little bit more confidence in setting this bag down. I didn't set down anything muddy, but I did set down a couple of wet surfaces and a little bit of water kind of got in through there. Nothing too big of a deal. The other thing is this is just a standard interior material, lining material. So it's not waterproof, the seams aren't taped or anything. So if you put muddy or wet shoes in here, like, or smelly shoes, like it's gonna get into the main compartment. So for me, that was a little bit of like maybe negative point of this bag here. Not this bag, of this shoe pouch here. And then rolling this back up, I'll show you very briefly here. If you roll this back up, roll it up like that, secure it at the bottom, and it's fairly out of the way there, like this. Throw everything back in here, flip this back. Because I don't use this shoe pouch for shoes so much, I do sometimes put like little other things in here, just like for, you know, things that I want quick first order access to. These are individually sealed masks in like plastic bags. Otherwise, for the reasons I mentioned, I obviously wouldn't put masks here at the bottom because they could get a little bit wet or a little bit dirty. But still, like if you're looking for like a bag with like a built-in shoe pouch, like this is a very standard implementation, very useful with all the inherent advantages and disadvantages that such a, you know, built-in shoe pouch type pocket would have. So next, let's talk about the front organization pocket. I'm gonna flip this flap open here, see if I can show you. It runs right in front of the fillet zipper here. It opens up like this, and it opens up quite clearly. Let me flip this bag up here. So this is the front of the bag, back of the bag, top of the bag, bottom of the bag. Opens all the way up here. One-way zipper. Not exactly its own independent dimension, but there's a fair amount of flexibility in this main compartment, so that's nice. Contrast interior stitching, zero internal organization, which was a little bit surprising for me. And I feel like it maybe reduced the usability of this pocket. And the reason why is everything ends up at the bottom like this, which has a couple of implications. One is, I obviously didn't want to put my phone in here because it's going to get scratched up because everything falls to the bottom. A lot of other bags, for example, the Evergood Civic Panel Loader series, or like the Air, almost any Air bag, tend to have like a pocket, internal pockets here for like a pen, a wallet, or something like that, a headphone, earbuds, you know, or like your phone. That kind of keeps them kind of up and lets you use the entire vertical height of the bag, and then gives you like a main dump area for like other stuff. I wish that this bag had that in here, but it doesn't, so that's okay. So what do I have in here? I've got like an Anker wireless battery charger. I've got like a fountain pen in a protective holder because there's no like pen loops, as I mentioned. I don't want to get scratched. Some hand cream, highlighter, and like a ballpoint pen here. And what's interesting is if you look at this battery here. It didn't used to be all scratched up like this. This is literally from things rubbing up against each other in this pocket, which isn't great. And then like AirPod Pros in a little protective case. You notice everything here, the delicate things have like padding or have in a case because of the lack of organization, everything kind of jumbled and scratching up here. There are nice things about this front pocket, which is because it opens up so wide, like even with the flap, which is fairly rigid closed, you can still get in like and see everything in there and easily dump everything in. Well, sorry, I just let the flap go there. You know, easily dump everything inside of it, which I quite like. The cons, as I mentioned, is like, you know, no organization, everything falls to the bottom and everything gets scratched up here. Maybe one other minor thing, but kind of something I noticed to note is because this is the flap zipper pocket, and this is the zipper pocket for the kind of main axis of the bag. And especially if they're not like both fully closed up, it's really easy for them to like be like this, close to each other. And if you try to access it, especially with the flap closed, you might grab the wrong one and then you get it in the middle or whatever. And something I want to call your attention to, you noticed a couple times now, just recently when I was talking about this front pocket, like this front fidlock buckle came loose. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute because that happens a lot on this bag here. All right, but anyway, relatively minor nitpick, and then, you know, you can solve it by like kind of having this zipper up further, and then like there's some vertical distance between them here. And maybe one final thing I forgot to mention here is There is a separate tech pouch that Modern Dayfarer sells that fits exactly like right. It's as if it was, maybe it was made for this. It's kind of flat and it runs the entire length of this. Pocket's fairly flat, so it's kind of nice to kind of stick that in here and then you can pull it in and out like that. I will do a separate review of that at some point in the future here, but just want to mention that that fits very well inside of this front pouch if that's your thing. So next, let's turn our attention to the other external pocket, which is the side mounted I'm going to call this quick access organizer pocket thing. So one side has the water bottle, the other side has this side mounted organizer pocket. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I'm very glad that there's a first order external, pocket, which has like a place for your keys and has a little bit of internal organization, especially because this front one does not. On the other hand, the way that this was implemented is a bit frictionful and it's not my favorite. So it's a one-way zipper like this, kind of hidden towards the back. But it gets a little bit, and there's two pockets. There's a pocket at the top and a kind of pocket at the top, and then a pocket at the bottom, and then obviously a key leash. It gets quite tight at the bottom here because of the way the zipper track is and just kind of how like the bag has to kind of come back into the bottom of the bag. So it makes accessing the bottom pocket, you can even see it's a little bit hard to see, makes accessing the bottom pocket kind of hard. And the top pocket is covered by the key leash. So like you're fighting the keys. See? So let's go ahead and talk about what I have in here. Obviously my keys in here. And then also here, we have this key leash here, and then you have this top pocket, which I have like some work IDs and some mints. And then you have this bottom pocket, at the bottom here, which I have some chapstick and some hand sanitizer. And these pockets themselves are kind of these top opening elasticated mesh pockets. In general, I just found it a little bit frictionful. I kind of talked about it, like it's hard to because the keys get in the way and you're battling them, and then it's hard to get the stuff in there. And the bottom one is kind of pushes against this, especially when you get the keys mounted in there. It's not my favorite. There's also no easy way to put your phone in here because you get scratched up by the keys or whatever you have in there. So again, that's kind of why I have to put my phone, or why I felt I had to put my phone in here, because it just wasn't a great place to put it. I wish that there were like a top mounted quick access pocket, like you find in a lot of other bags. But anyway, this is the main organizer pocket. Glad it's there. A little bit frictionful, a little bit tight to use. Not my favorite, personally, but just something to think about there. And I kind of also wish that the key leash were a little bit longer, a little bit more elasticated, because of when you have the bag, like you say, you swing the bag over your shoulder like this, you want to get into lock, unlock your door. I found this just wasn't long enough to reach to my door when the bag was mounted like this. On the other hand, you can see one of the advantages of having the side / pocket like this is you can swing the bag just like this and be able to get into there fairly easily. Again, minus the internal frictions, but at least in terms of access, it's right here versus having to go all the way around to the front pocket there. So next, let's talk about the laptop compartment on this bag here. Storm guard zipper at the top, which I appreciate, enhanced weather resistance. Open it up, super simple, false bottom, kind of padded lightly here, and padded here, so that kind of prevents sharp things inside of here from jutting into the laptop, and the laptop from like jutting into your back, etc. I showed this previously. I've got inside of here a 13-inch MacBook Air and a 11-inch iPad Pro with a keyboard type cover. Very simple, no other external compartments or anything in there. I did mention there's a false bottom on there, well padded. Maybe my only maybe comments on here is there's no it's not a ton of independent dimension. It's basically flat and padded. So thicker lap, if you have a thick boy, it's not gonna fit very comfortably in there. I mean, it may fit depending on how thick it is, but it's not great. And then there's no other separate laptop compartment to kind of keep your iPad or tablet compartment. So you're just kind of dropping everything in there, which can, it's fine. It just something I maybe would note in there. Holds up to a 16-inch MacBook Pro, in case you're wondering. Again, if you have a thicker laptop, your mileage may vary. And that's really it for the external laptop compartment, though I will note the fact that it is external means it's quite nice for going through security in the airport or whatever, which is one of the reasons why I think this bag could do well for, some kinds of one bag travel. So next, let's talk about the main compartment of the bag. We're in the home stretch of this review here. I've talked about how the volume can expand or contract based on how much you let this out, and the bag can kind of hold more capacity or less capacity or whatever. It has a single opening, single top opening that is held in place by, or has a top opening which is held in place by a single fidlock buckle, which is quite fast to close, as fidlock buckles are. That's their advantage. A thing that I noticed, and you saw this happen a couple times, look at that. Unlike many other fidlock buckles, there's something about this one where it can just come open without you, they're supposed to require explicit action to unlock, slide off, lateral slide, and lift. You can drop it in vertically. That's the whole point of a fidlock buckle. You can just drop it on the top, and then you have to slide it off to the side. But because of the fact that it's mounted in the center, and this is such a rigid surface, and it inherently can't, because of physics, it will easily hit that lateral motion. If you can imagine, if the bag is kind of laying here and you go to pick it up by this flap, which is a natural thing to do because there's no handle on this side and this is very rigid, it'll come undone. I think earlier when I was kind of messing around with this, I showed you how it accidentally came undone. Anyway, it's very easy for this main buckle to come undone. It is something that I hope they improve in the next version of this bag, and just kind of want to call it out. But anyway, the top opening, which is quite stiff, and I'll talk about maybe one of the aspects of that in a moment when I talk about this front internal pocket here, is not the only way to get into this bag. It is one way, and obviously lets you see way down into the contents of the bag here, but because it's quite a tall bag, a little bit narrow, and because, this bag doesn't stand up on its own, I think I mentioned this earlier, I'm always holding it with one hand and trying to fish around on the inside. The other nice trick that this bag has is it fillets open like this. And then you can see everything that's in this bag. And at the end, I'll have a couple of other bags that open in a similar style. I kind of like this flexibility in terms of bag opening styles. I'm still partial to clamshells, but I think that's maybe partially why I appreciate this, is quasi clamshell-like. Another thing you can do with this is you can just open one side of it, which I find myself probably accessing the bag the most in this way, which is just one side, and it lets you kind of get in deep without needing to do the whole fillet open, and without having to fight inside from the top like this here. Anyway, once you get into the main bag, you're going to notice, the main compartment, you're going to notice several things. 2 internal front lid mounted pockets, and then a back stretch pocket, and then the main compartment. So let's talk about these front mounted pockets first. So this is a fairly standard thing you often find. Most bags that have kind of opening on the front like this, you're going to find 2 pockets, 1 or 2 pockets here. Usually they're the top ones like this, where you can kind of see through it, and then the bottom one is kind of opaque like this. One thing I would notice, because this bag fillets open like this, the pockets are much narrower than you might expect on something like a CPL 24, for example, Evergus Civic Panel Loader 24, for example. Just something to note. The mesh has some built-in dimension, and I think theoretically so does this bottom one. But in general, I found these pockets to be a little bit tighter than I was expecting. This is a much more, it's a rubbery kind of plasticky feeling mesh, not stretchy at all. This is just the internal poly, ripstop. Also doesn't stretch at all here. So this is a bit tighter in general. This top one zips open one way. I use it to keep things I want to keep access to, but want to keep secure. So wallets and coin pouch or whatever. So a very common interactions, maybe friction I had. And I guess if you put your wallet in the front, you maybe don't have this problem, but it's going to be a lot less secure, so I wouldn't do that. Or if you have a very flat wallet, you can put it in here. You will run into like some of the friction access, depending on how often you access your wallet that I mentioned before. So a very common thing is I often keep my wallet on the inside front zip pocket. That way it requires a main zip and then a quick secondary zip to kind of get at, which is a little bit more secure. Because the front flap is so stiff, like when I would flip it open like this, try and get inside, it would like hit me in the face, like, you know, like, so I'm kind of like fighting my way around this stiff flap to try and get into and get at my wallet. This is the Bellroy Apex wallet, which I've shown often on camera here. It's just something to kind of note about the stiffness of this bag. It's, you know, certainly something you can deal with, but want to point out there. And then also inside of here I have, you know, so I have my Bellroy Apex wallet. I have some cards and extra cash, Bellroy Apex wallet, and then like some coins in a little coin pouch here. And then, you know, you could fit other stuff in there if you wanted to. But like I said, I kind of just felt like this pocket was a little bit tight and it was a little bit frictionful to get into. And then at the bottom here, you have this opaque pocket. Inside of here, I just have masks, some more masks, and I think some cough drops or whatever. I found this pocket quite hard to access, to be honest with you, or to get in and out, not in and out of, like, but it just was a little bit, it was just kind of maybe because it was narrow, it was kind of tight. It often, if you got the bag kind of like stuffed up with stuff here, it tends to hit right at the bottom where you have all the stuff in the front lid pocket. Remember, it just all falls at the bottom here. And then if you have stuff in the main compartment, it all falls at the bottom here. So like that's right where this pocket is. And it's just kind of, I just found it hard to access the contents here because things were fighting against it or whatever. And then when you fillet the bag open, the opening line or whatever is right here. So it kind of tends to put a little bit of pressure on here. You can see how it's kind of tighter. So it is just kind of a little bit frictionful in and out. I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but I did notice that about this. I wish that maybe the opening line or like the folding line were just a little bit lower, so it just didn't hit quite, like you had a little bit more flexibility in this pocket. But anyway, setting that aside here, and I guess, sorry, before, and I did mention this before, but like this panel tends to be a little bit stiff. You do see this in other kind of panel loading bags. For example, the Evergoods panel, mountain panel loader 30 or 32 or 5 or whatever it is. You know, that also had a pretty stiff, heavy, you know, panel because it has stuff on the inside, stuff on the outside. This one, same thing here, but it's okay. It's not a bad thing, just kind of mentioning it. And then you have the main compartment. Let me show you what I have inside, then we'll talk about the features. I have some AirPod Maxes or whatever those are called. This is the Evergood Civic Access Pouch 1. One of my favorite kind of just do-it-all kind of holding kits that's got my tech stuff in it. I've got some in-ear monitors, actually. These are the Sony IER Z1Rs. I don't know, that's, if you're keeping count, that's 3 pairs of headphones I have in here, which is kind of more than usual. I don't know why I have all 3 of these. And then I have like a Marvis toothbrush set, you know, it's kind of like whatever. And then that's it for the main compartment here. You can see the shoe pouch at the bottom. And I previously talked about like how I just like it is quite voluminous if you need it to be. You can fit a lot of stuff in here. You can throw a jacket in here and all that other random stuff I had in here. And then because it kind of like flexes up a little bit, you can, you know, make the bag more rectangular, you can carry more. You can cinch it down tight when you don't have as much stuff in there. So I quite like that about this bag here. There is this single elasticated gusseted pocket inside of here. I have a couple of a notebook, another notebook, Bellroy note taker, and then just like a small B5 folder with my business papers, man. Okay. You can carry like an iPad or another tablet device in here, but because this is quite a loose elastic and it's very like puffy, I didn't find it to be the most secure. I'll give an example here. Like if I don't know, secure is maybe not the right word. I just didn't like how it felt. So if I take the tablet and I drop it in here, you can see like it's just rattling around in there. It doesn't like keep it nice and tight against the back, which is just kind of something I would prefer it did. Obviously, if you put like a bigger laptop, you're gonna have the same problem. This is just not strong enough to keep it tight against there. Again, this is maybe preference. If I were to put a device in there, I would prefer something more like the, I don't want to go back to name checking Evergoods, but like the Evergoods line usually has like a stronger elastic at the back, maybe like the PLC 20 or whatever that's called, which I think I've done a review of in the past year. But the good part of having like this kind of puffy gusset is like it lets you like just throw a bunch of stuff in there. And if it has dimension, that's also cool. So for example, if I throw these, you know, Apple AirPod Pros in here, they'll like, well, actually, let me not throw them on top of the notebook. You can easily throw these in there and they will kind of be kept secure there. You can also drop your notebook on top of there, also secure. Then I drop in the, whatever, you know, the rest of the stuff in there. And like, it kind of keeps it from like a little bit more secure and you can kind of access stuff more easily here. So that for me is one of the advantages is if you want to carry bulkier stuff, this kind of puffy gusseted kind of loose elastic helps with organization. I've got like the IERMs, Z1Rs or whatever in here, which are quite chunky, but like they're kind of kept secure unless you use slightly more, ever so slightly more of the space in this bag. But in general, everything in this main compartment just kind of falls all the way to the bottom. The good thing is, like I said, you can stack up stuff here and then expand the top of the bag. And it can comfortably carry that entire load. In those days when you got to carry a bunch of stuff there. So in conclusion, like I quite like this bag. It was actually like really quite pleasant to use in a variety of situations. Good combination of this main expandable volume, moderate organization, made it pretty useful for a variety of use cases. I was surprised how well it handled 2 laptops and an iPad Pro with a keyboard cover, plus all of the 3 pairs of headphones, if that's your thing in life. I like the sleek, slimmer design when you got to cinch down. I like that it can expand up when you need it to like carry more stuff, and just kind of flexible in usage in terms of capacity. And the, you know, you can add the sternum strap and the shaping, and then the as it like expands or gets tighter, the hip belt, etc. Kind of just good. You know, good all-around flexibility to this bag. I also kind of just like the, you know, appearance of it, though obviously, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Some of the maybe areas for opportunities for improvement, obviously, I wasn't thrilled about like how this thing kind of just opens up with the lateral movement. Some of the organization, especially here or here or here, I just wish it were a little bit more refined, had a little bit more, usability / internal segmentation, organization, etc. That was something I kind of wished. And then this is a personal one. Like I kind of just wish it stood up a little bit more on its own. I just didn't like how it kind of just kept flopping down. But overall, like a very good pack. I quite enjoyed my my usage of this bag, and I recommend it if you're looking for, you know, the kind of bag, the flexible bag that can handle capably a variety of use cases. So, with that having been said, if you're in the market for a bag like this, what are some other bags that you might want to consider? Well, first and foremost, actually, I don't know what first and foremost. So let's consider that question in a variety of different, maybe aspects. One aspect we might consider is what's another bag that's good for a combination of like daily EDC, but also can hold some bulkier stuff for the gym or whatever with a built-in shoe pouch. I have here the Air Duffel Pack V3. I've actually done a full review of this previously. I'll link that in the description below. There's also like the Air Fit Pack V3, which maybe is a different profile. Both of these are different profiles. Maybe the same kind of general equivalent use case. You can see here, you got the whole built-in shoe pouch thing. Shoe pouch is a little bit easier to use on this one, in my personal opinion. You also see like they've got a slightly different solution for the drainage holes here. It has a big open capacity. It's a duffel style bag here. Same kind of like side water bottle pocket, side handle, top handle, all of which are features on this bag here. Dual water bottle pockets though, but also a little teeny tiny bit of like side mounted organization up on here. on both sides actually, sorry. So again, kind of taking the idea of like side mount organization, water bottles, but also applying it in a slightly different remix case. The main compartment is obviously a little bit different. It's a duffel style opening. Top quick stash pocket, which I kind of appreciate here, a little bit more usable in many cases. And then an external laptop compartment. And here you're seeing like some of the top organization, stretch, pocketing, and then some laptop with padding, and then tablet, and then like other pockets at the bottom here. This is kind of air strength is generally like, lots of organization. And then on the back, air mesh, which I obviously don't like as much as I like as the air mesh on here. The straps are thicker, maybe more simplistic, same kind of general sliding rail system for the sternum strap. Also kind of a tall bag, slightly taller than the Modern Dayfarer bag. And then your luggage pass-through here. So maybe a different bag to consider if you're looking for like the gym EDC use case kind of scenario that I think this bag's pretty good at. If the dimension that we're looking at is maybe a different interpretation of some of the features on this bag, but in like an EDC type use case, well, this is the Bellroy Venture Pack. First thing you're going to notice, though the main opening is a little bit different and more frictionful, you do get that same kind of fillet style front opening as you get with the Modern Dayfarer pack. On the inside here, you're going to notice, dual internal pocketing, similar there. Laptop compartment is internally mounted. There's a separate tablet compartment. There's a weird little pen pouch that's like kind of shallow. Two internal side stretch mesh pockets, which are actually, you might think they're for water bottles, so you could put water bottles in there, but they're maybe more for like, pencil pouches and stuff like that. And then kind of like, same kind of, big open internal area. No shoe pouch on this one. But you also do get on this one, top mounted quick stash pocket, which is, right here in the front. A little bit more usable, I think, than the side mount organization here, but you also get dual side mounted pockets, similar to the one on this side. And this one also has a key leash. It's a little bit longer, you can see here. Straps are less good, if I can express my personal opinion / I think possibly objective perspective. That's probably a contradiction. Sternum strap here, fidlock kind of thing, elastic here, but the straps are just generally thinner and less supportive. I don't like the back panel on this one as much here either. I think it's just kind of more meh. Definitely prefer the back panel on the Modern Dayfarer, and this one's a very flexible bag compared to the Modern Dayfarer. And finally, if you're looking for a different interpretation of the same general, like, aesthetic perspective on design and silhouette and shaping and all that, this is the Peak Design Everyday Backpack 20-liter. There's also a 30-liter version of it. Obviously, you can see some pretty strong familial, they're not the same family, but you can see some pretty strong, like, similar design cues and kind of like their structure and their shaping. Now, this bag is designed, it's called the Everyday Backpack. It's designed to carry photo gear. Opens up at the top like this, which is similar, but it does not fillet open per se, but it does have these big dual opening, side mounted, things you can see through here. It's a photo design bag, so you can move these adjusters up and down and carry lenses and cameras and stuff. It does have some amount, as you can see, this ladder tends to open up. It goes all the way up to the top like this, so you can actually carry much more capacity or things inside of it as you need by kind of like laddering it up to the top like this. So you can carry more stuff, similar gusseting design. Dual pockets, more handles, external laptop compartment here with a little bit of organization. In general, I think there's also a tablet pocket in here as well, tablet and laptop compartment. In general, the Peak Design bags don't do so well at carrying laptops and tablets. Like, they carry them, but it's just really tight. They have no place for business papers. Man, it's kind of one of the weak points of the Peak Design Everyday line. It's a much more rigid bag. It doesn't, I mean, it flexes, but just overall there's padding everywhere. There's much more organization in these side pockets on both sides, these wings on both sides. But whether it's useful for everyday usage or not, as opposed to photo use, is kind of up in the air. My instinct is like, I don't know, my take is like, not really. Like, there's just more pockets. It's good if you're, you know, if you're looking for photo kind of gear, but it's not so good for everyday usage. But obviously something to consider if you kind of like the general form factor and everything of this bag. And so really that is it. If you have any questions about this bag, go ahead and leave it in the comments below, and if I can, I will answer it. And if you have any bags you would like me to review, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. And if I own them, I will review them. Thank you very much.